They said she was too wild to be loved, and he, too selfish to stay. She painted her pain into every canvas she touched. He turned his lovers into murals and left their names behind in smoke. But when Luciana Luna Marquez and Emiliano Leo Valdez met, their love ignited something deeper than desire, something dangerous. Their story wasn't soft. It was fire and fracture. Beauty carved from betrayal. Art born from agony. In the heart of post-revolutionary Mexico, two of the country's most powerful artists collided, not in silence or simplicity, but in a storm of passion and protest. She was young, ferociously brilliant, a woman who turned pain into pigment. He was twice her age, a legend in the art world, and a man with too many ghosts and not enough apologies. What began as a battle of ideas, on politics, art, and the soul, became an affair the world couldn't look away from. But behind the fame, behind the public praise and the beautiful paintings, was something no gallery could frame. A love haunted by infidelity, shattered by pride, and resurrected by something no one saw coming. Some say their relationship was doomed from the start. Others say it was destiny disguised as disaster. But ask those who knew them best, and they'll tell you, they loved each other in ways that terrified them, in ways that consumed them, in ways that would nearly destroy them both, and somehow still save them. This isn't a fairy tale. It's not about perfect endings or flawless hearts. It's about two souls who could only speak truth through color, and who spent a lifetime trying to finish a painting neither of them could start alone. Speech Balloon. Have you ever loved someone so fiercely that it changed the way you see the world? Let us know in the comments, and don't forget to subscribe for more real, heart-deep love stories. Because this is a story you'll feel in your bones. Before we begin, this is love from my heart to you. Or maybe, just a small love letter to say thank you. Once upon a time, this channel fell in love. Not with fairy tales, but with the people who believe in them. The ones who cry during the quiet parts. Who pause to feel a heartbeat between the lines. Who still believe that love, even complicated, flawed, impossible love, can be real. Love Enchanted was created for you. The romantic. The hopeful. The heart that's been broken and still dares to open again. So if you're here, you're not just watching a story. You're part of one. Stay with us, for stories that ache, heal, and remind us why love is always worth the risk. Long before she ever touched his hand, Luna Marquez learned to live with pain. She was only 6 when the accident happened. A streetcar collided with the cart she was riding in, splintering wood and bone in a heartbeat. The doctors said it was a miracle she survived. But survival came at a cost. Months in bed, surgeries that never seemed to end, and a body that would never move the same again. While other children played, Luna stared at ceilings. She studied shadows. She learned to draw before she could walk again, sketching her pain with the same focus other children used to chase butterflies. By the time she turned 16, her bedroom walls were covered in self-portraits, not out of vanity, but necessity. No one else could see her as she truly was, so she painted herself again and again until the image matched the ache. Her world was Mexico City in the 1920s, a place pulsing with revolution and reinvention. The old gods were being questioned, the old powers unseated. Art wasn't just decoration anymore, it was declaration, protest, healing. And Luna, young, brown-skinned, bisexual, and loud in all the ways a woman wasn't supposed to be, had no interest in being palatable. Her paintings were vivid, almost brutal in their honesty. She painted herself twisted, radiant, bleeding, laughing. Her hips bore flowers. Her spine grew thorns. Her lovers, men and women alike, appeared in glimpses across her canvases, always beautiful, always fleeting. In a city where most women were expected to paint fruit bowls and still lives, Luna painted herself mid-scream, mid-kiss, mid-crash. Yet for all her courage and color, she still carried a loneliness she couldn't name. Admired but misunderstood, she often felt like her art spoke louder than her voice ever could. People praised her talent, but looked away when she limped. They wanted her brilliance without her burden. Then came the murals. Luna first saw Leo Valdez's work on the side of a crumbling post office downtown. She had to step into traffic to take it all in. A wall 30 feet high, covered in the stories of the poor, the forgotten, the rising. A woman holding a rifle stood beside a priest holding a child. Smoke curled from factories. A clenched fist reached toward the sun. It wasn't subtle. It wasn't soft. It was angry and alive. The signature at the bottom was nearly lost in shadow. E. Valdez. That same week, she saw his name again, in a headline. Emiliano Valdez declares, Mexico belongs to the people, not the politicians. He was everywhere. His face on pamphlets. His voice on the radio. Stories about his lovers, his temper, his genius. Rumors said he'd fathered children in 3 countries and broken the hearts of 10 times as many. He was 20 years older than Luna, and already a legend. But what gripped her wasn't the myth, it was the art. In his murals, she saw echoes of her own work, the defiance, the grief, the need to be seen completely. He painted like he was at war with silence, and Luna, who had lived so much of her life in stillness, recognized the fight. She began seeking out his work. Walking miles just to glimpse another wall he'd brought to life. At first, she told herself it was research, inspiration. But it was something deeper, an ache in her chest she hadn't felt in years. Not desire, exactly. Not yet. Curiosity. A hunger for collision. He was nothing like her. Grand, extroverted, charming to a fault. She was quiet, watchful, intimate in her expression. Yet some part of her wanted to see what would happen if their worlds met. What would he say about her work? Would he mock it? Would he understand? One night, she dreamed of painting beside him, arguing as they created. She woke up covered in sweat, a sketchbook clutched to her chest, filled with eyes and flames and the outline of a man she hadn't yet met. She closed the book. Ridiculous, she told herself. But a week later, her friend Joaquin handed her a folded invitation. Salon d'Arte. Saturday night. Revolutionary thinkers, musicians, muralists. And then, with a sly grin, he'll be there. The salon was already loud by the time Luna arrived. Cigarette smoke curled above the heads of painters and poets crowded into the grand living room of a crumbling colonial estate. Books spilled from shelves. Abstract paintings hung crooked on the walls. Someone in the corner played a discordant tune on a violin while 2 revolutionaries debated land reform over mezcal. Luna stood near the door, gripping the invitation in her pocket like armor. She scanned the room, searching for him. Emiliano Valdez. When she finally spotted him, it wasn't the size of his presence that struck her, it was the silence around him. People leaned in when he spoke. His gestures were slow, deliberate, as though the air bent to accommodate him. He wore a worn jacket spattered with paint, and a single streak of white across his sleeve caught the light like a scar. He laughed, loud and unfiltered, then turned as if sensing her gaze. Their eyes met across the crowd. He didn't smile. Neither did she. A moment later, the hostess, a playwright with wild hair and louder opinions, called for quiet. Tonight, we have a young firebrand among us, she announced, motioning toward Luna. Luciana Marquez. Her paintings are like daggers dipped in honey. And of course, our guest of honor, Emiliano Valdez, the muralist of the people. Applause followed. Luna hated it. She didn't come to be displayed. She came to watch him. But he approached her first. Luciana, he said, drawing out each syllable as though tasting it. I've heard your name. They say you paint your pain. She arched a brow. And they say you paint whatever will get you printed in the morning papers. A few people gasped. Leo's grin twitched, more amused than offended. Touché, he replied. Still, I'm curious. What do you believe art is for? Truth, she said without hesitation. Not applause. Not propaganda. Not legacy. He nodded slowly. Spoken like someone who hasn't yet been censored. And you, she asked, tilting her head. What do you believe art is for? He took a sip of wine, eyes never leaving hers. Survival. A murmur swept through the room. Someone changed the music. Conversations resumed, but the current between them remained. Later, after the guests had thinned and the windows fogged with late-night heat, Luna stepped outside to breathe. She didn't hear him follow. "You challenged me in there," he said from behind her. "Most don't." She turned. "Most are probably afraid of you. Are you?" "No." He looked her over. Not in the way men usually did, not with hunger, but with calculation. Like he was trying to sketch her in his mind before she disappeared. "You have talent," he said. "But your work, it flinches." Luna blinked. "Excuse me. It's powerful, yes. But it still tries to protect you. You paint pain, but you filter it. You haven't bled all the way through yet." His words landed like a slap, sharp, but not cruel. Honest. And somehow, exactly what she needed to hear. "Funny," she said tightly. "I thought the point was to evolve, not bleed out." Leo shrugged. "Maybe. But if you ever decide to bleed without fear, you'll change the world." She stared at him. "And you," she said carefully, "you hide behind scale. You make everything big and loud so no one notices you're too afraid to be intimate." That shut him up. For a moment. Then he laughed, the sound low and unexpected. "You're dangerous." "No," Luna said, brushing past him. "I'm just not impressed." She left without saying goodbye. But that night, she dreamed of brushes dipped in fire and murals she hadn't yet dared to paint. His voice echoed in her mind, not as a threat, but as a challenge. And as she stood in front of her easel the next morning, Luna realized something that made her scowl. "I hated him, and I couldn't wait to see him again." 3 weeks passed before Luna saw Leo again. Not by chance, but by invitation. A well-funded public arts initiative was seeking prominent artists to collaborate on a mural to celebrate workers' rights. The committee wanted power, emotion, something revolutionary. Luna, reluctantly, said yes, only to discover she'd be sharing the wall with Emiliano Valdez. The space was massive, an exposed concrete wall on the side of a labor union hall. When Luna arrived, Leo was already there, standing at the base of the structure, arms crossed, squinting up at the blank expanse like it had insulted him. "I didn't ask for a partner," he said without turning. "Neither did I," she replied, dropping her satchel of brushes. Their first few days were tense. Leo sketched with long, aggressive strokes, bold, symbolic, grand. Luna's work was intimate, layered, abstract. Their styles clashed like weather systems. He painted fists and flames. She painted eyes and flowers that wept. "We can't have all emotion and no action," he barked one afternoon. "And we can't scream without first listening," she shot back. But as the days turned into weeks, something shifted. They began to argue less and talk more. They worked side by side for hours, silent, focused, smudged with color and sweat. She caught him humming sometimes while he painted. He caught her tracing the outline of his work with her eyes, lips slightly parted. They shared water, stories, scraps of shade. It was on a rainy afternoon, while taking shelter under a rusted scaffold, that Luna showed him a charcoal sketch of his hand. It wasn't perfect, but it was honest, tense, human. "You drew this from memory?" he asked. She nodded. "I wanted to understand how you hold a brush." He looked at her, really looked at her, for the first time. "May I keep it?" She hesitated. "It's not finished." He smiled. "Neither are we." That night, he brought her a canvas, small, personal, unlike anything he'd ever painted for public display. It was a portrait of her, not heroic or stylized, but quiet, thoughtful. She was sitting on a bench, unaware, her fingers stained with pigment, her expression unreadable. She stared at it for a long time. "No one's ever painted me like this," she whispered. "I've never wanted to," he said. They kissed under the flickering hallway light, hesitant at first, then urgent, like the words they didn't know how to say were finally finding shape. Afterward, they didn't talk about what it meant. They returned to the mural, brushes in hand, but something between them had shifted, subtle, unspoken. Their movements more in sync. Their glances lingering. They started finishing each other's lines. Laughing when they didn't. They'd argue over the placement of a figure, then spend an hour silently painting in tandem, like a duet neither had rehearsed. And yet, nothing about them was easy. Leo was impulsive, he'd scrap half a day's work on a whim. Luna was meticulous, often lost in the detail of one corner while the rest of the wall waited. He teased her about her stubbornness. She rolled her eyes at his drama. But it was through the friction that the fire grew. One evening, long after the sun had set and the street below emptied, Luna climbed down from the scaffold and found Leo waiting with 2 cups of coffee and a blanket laid out on the concrete floor. "You're not trying to seduce me, are you?" she asked. "Only if it works," he replied. They sat, their paint-streaked hands brushing occasionally, eyes flicking between the mural above and each other. He told her about his father, a stonecutter who never smiled. She spoke about her childhood bedroom, her ceiling, her loneliness, her need to create. He touched the scar on her leg without asking, and she let him. That night, they didn't make love like lovers who knew each other. They did it like strangers trying to memorize something they weren't sure they'd be allowed to keep. In the morning, Luna left a note on his sketchpad. "Your murals shout. Mine whisper. But together, they speak." She never signed it. She didn't need to. Speech balloon. Do you believe 2 people can fall in love through creativity alone? Let us know. This story is just getting started. The mural took 47 days to complete. When they finally stepped back to look at it, an explosion of color, grief, power, and tenderness, neither spoke. But Leo reached out, took her hand, and gave it a squeeze. They had made something neither could have created alone. Not just art, but something dangerously close to love. Luna's sister, Camila, arrived from Veracruz in the early spring. She was 19, newly heartbroken, and full of nervous charm. Luna welcomed her without hesitation, offering the spare room, fresh brushes, and a quiet place to heal. Camila had always looked up to her older sister, the bold artist, the woman unafraid to live on her own terms. At first, it was light-hearted. Camila fluttered around the studio, asking questions, helping clean brushes, studying the mural with wide-eyed admiration. Leo, always gracious to a guest, humored her enthusiasm. He smiled at her jokes, praised her amateur sketches. Luna barely noticed. She was consumed with a new painting, one that pulsed with color and heat, her soul on canvas. But things began to shift. Camila started lingering when Leo was alone. Laughed a little too hard at his stories. One night, Luna came home from a solo gallery event to find the 2 of them on the balcony, sharing a bottle of wine. Camila had her head thrown back in laughter. Leo looked away too quickly. Luna felt a flicker of unease. She swallowed it. The betrayal revealed itself on a Tuesday morning, folded in half on the edge of Leo's desk. A letter, written in Camila's unmistakable cursive. "I can still feel you in the way you touched my hair that night. I shouldn't want this, but I do." Luna's hands trembled as she held the page, her eyes scanning the ink over and over, as if reading it again might change the words. But there it was, plain and brutal. Not a misunderstanding. Not a mistake. A confession. When Leo walked in and saw her holding it, he didn't deny it. He just closed his eyes and said, "Luna." She slapped the letter against his chest and stepped back. "How long?" "A few weeks," he said quietly. "With Camila?" Her voice cracked. "My sister. It wasn't planned. I didn't mean to. Don't you dare say it wasn't what it looked like." The days that followed were a blur of anger and ash. Luna packed her things and left the home they had built, half studio, half shrine to their shared brilliance. Before she walked out, she took a single match to the canvas they had painted together the night after their first kiss. It curled and blackened before Leo could stop her. The story broke within a week. A rival critic leaked the scandal to a local arts magazine. The muralist's muse betrayed. The headlines were relentless. Camila fled the city. Luna refused all interviews. And Leo, usually bombastic and unapologetic, disappeared from public life. Suddenly, the art world had sides. Some blamed Leo, calling him a predator who fed on youth and chaos. Others whispered that Luna was too volatile, too intense, always destined to implode. Paintings were withdrawn from galleries. One museum canceled a planned exhibit of their collaborative work. Collectors hesitated. But Luna didn't care. In her small, rented studio above a bakery, she poured every ounce of heartbreak into the canvas. For weeks, she barely slept. She painted through fever, through tears. Every stroke was a wound. Every color, a scream. The image that emerged was raw, devastating, a fragmented figure torn in two, one half blazing with passion, the other crumbling into ash. In the background, a faceless man reaching, always reaching, but never able to touch her. She called it, the one he couldn't finish. It became her most iconic work. Art critics called it a masterpiece of betrayal. Some said it reinvented pain. Others said it was a declaration of freedom. But Luna never spoke about it publicly. She didn't need to. And Leo, he stopped painting altogether. He tried, at first. He stared at blank walls for hours. Sketched empty outlines that led nowhere. But every image reminded him of her. Of the shape of her hands when she blended blues. Of the way she bit her lip when her brush hesitated. Of her laughter, sharp, sudden, when she caught him lost in thought. He visited the mural they once made together late at night, alone, standing in the shadows as if trying to find the ghost of what they'd shared in its lines. His studio became a tomb. Canvases untouched. Colors still sealed. And in one forgotten drawer, the sketch she'd made of his hand sat folded, untouched. He couldn't throw it away. Because he knew, even in the worst of it, even in the wreckage he had caused, he had loved her. But Leo Valdez had never learned how to love well. Luna, meanwhile, kept painting. Not because she was healed, but because it was the only way she knew how to breathe. Her work grew sharper, braver. She was invited to show in New York, Berlin, Paris. Each piece bared more of her than the last. Yet behind the applause, the new admirers, and the critics who now called her Mexico's bleeding heart, there remained a silence only Leo had ever been able to fill. And every time she stood before the one he couldn't finish, she remembered the moment she found that letter. The tremble in his voice. The fire that ate through the canvas they had once called the beginning. The man who had shattered her, and unknowingly given her the greatest painting of her life. Time did what only time could do. It stretched, softened, and redefined. In the years that followed their separation, Luna Marquez became a force the world could no longer ignore. She traveled first to New York, then to Berlin, and finally Paris, where her solo exhibition drew lines around the block. Her paintings were loud and intimate all at once, drenched in color and agony, like broken hymns sung in oils. Critics praised her as revolutionary. Her name became synonymous with defiance, vulnerability, and fierce independence. But Luna didn't just paint. She spoke. In essays, in manifestos, in late-night interviews in dim-lit cafes. She wrote boldly about freedom, not just political, but personal. About the female body as a battlefield, about queer love as art, about the price of being seen and misunderstood. Her words pierced as deeply as her brushes ever had. To create is to remember who you are before someone else taught you to shrink, she wrote in The Artist as Wound. She never mentioned Leo by name. But his shadow lingered between every line. And back in Mexico, Emiliano Valdez, once the voice of a nation, had grown quiet. He abandoned murals. The scaffolding gathered dust. The plazas no longer echoed with speeches and slogans. Instead, he took to painting small, unannounced portraits. Pieces that rarely saw daylight. Portraits of workers in stillness. women with unreadable eyes, children holding wilted flowers, and, more than once, Luna. Not the Luna the public adored. Not the icon. But the Luna he remembered in quiet, painting barefoot, laughing mid-sentence, eyes closed as she hummed and mixed color. These works never left his studio. He stopped giving interviews, declined retrospectives. He even rejected a state honor, mumbling something about art being too holy to pin medals on. But every now and then, when no one was watching, he'd unfold that worn charcoal sketch of his hand, drawn by her in silence, in wonder, and press his palm against it like a prayer. He tried writing once. Luna, there are no excuses. Only colors I never learned to mix, and words I never had the courage to speak. He crumpled the letter before finishing. Too late. Always too late. Luna, too, sometimes found herself on the edge of a letter. Emiliano. I saw a mural today in Berlin that reminded me of your touch. Messy, massive, impossible to ignore. She folded the paper and slid it into a box beneath her bed. The box filled over time. Unsent letters. Unsent anger. Unsent longing. Despite their distance, they followed each other's work from afar. Luna would pause when a critic mentioned a new series of Leo's portraits and wonder if she was among them. Leo clipped reviews of her exhibitions and taped them to his studio wall. Never framed, just present. They each loved again, but never quite the same. Luna had lovers in Europe, brief and bright like fireworks. One, a French sculptor, stayed with her for nearly a year. But when he asked if she could stop painting her pain, she packed his things by dawn. I paint what's true, she said. And you don't get to rewrite my history. Leo, too, entertained companionship. A journalist, then a widow with 3 children. But he always pulled away just before it became real. He claimed it was his work. Everyone knew it was something else. And through it all, neither forgot. Sometimes, during gallery interviews, Luna would be asked, "Who influenced your emotional style?" She'd pause, then smile with a bitterness that made people lean in. Once, there was a man who loved too loudly and listened too little. He taught me what not to do, and somehow, taught me everything else. Leo, in his few public appearances, said even less. But one day, an eager student asked why he'd stopped painting murals. Leo stared at the boy and said only. The canvas that mattered most was never a wall. And still, their work kept speaking for them. Luna's 1942 piece, Before the Ash Fell, featured a figure in profile, unmistakably Leo, trapped behind a pane of glass, paint bleeding from his hands. The expression was one of ache, not accusation. It was the first time she painted him since the one he couldn't finish. That same year, Leo painted a self-portrait titled, What She Saw. Unlike his usual bold lines, this one was soft, hesitant. The background was a swirl of blues and reds. His eyes looked straight ahead, but something about them was empty. Like he was searching for someone he'd already lost. Neither artist publicly acknowledged the works. But the timing, the imagery, the echoes, they didn't need to. Art galleries in 2 different continents displayed the pieces in the same month. A critic from El Universal called it, the most intimate conversation ever held between 2 people who haven't spoken in years. And maybe that's what it was. A conversation. Across silence. Across paint. Across years of pride and pain and what-ifs. Luna stood one evening before What She Saw. The gallery was quiet. She reached out, just barely touching the edge of the frame. Her lover at the time asked, "Do you regret it?" She didn't answer right away. Then quietly, "I regret not listening. But I don't regret leaving." Leo, somewhere in Mexico, sat alone in his studio, painting a new face. One that wasn't hers, but held something of her mouth, her gaze, her defiance. He paused, wiped his brush, and whispered to no one. She was right. I was loud. But I never said the one thing that mattered. The city hadn't changed much, but they had. Luna hadn't planned to be at the protest. Her flight back to Mexico City had been delayed, and the streets were already swelling with chants by the time her car reached the plaza. Farmers, teachers, artists. A new generation marching for the same promises the last had been fed and forgotten. She stood off to the side, wrapped in a faded shawl, sunglasses over tired eyes. She wasn't there to be seen, just to remember. That's when she spotted him. Across the crowd, Emiliano Valdez. Older, grayer, his famous shoulders a little hunched, his stride less commanding, but unmistakably him. He wasn't waving a sign. He wasn't shouting. He was just there, watching, bearing witness. Their eyes met for the first time in years. Neither smiled. The city roared around them, but inside that glance, there was silence. Later, it was Luna who approached. She found him at a dusty cafe off the main road, the kind they used to slip into after long nights painting, when their hands were stained with pigment and their hearts too full for words. He looked up as she slid into the chair across from him. For a moment, they just stared at one another. Then he said softly, "You look stronger." She raised an eyebrow. "I am." A pause. "And you," she said, "you look like someone who finally learned how to sit still." He chuckled. "I had no choice." Their conversation moved slowly, deliberately, like two old musicians tuning their instruments before playing again. No apologies. No accusations. Just shared breath and long glances. Talk of friends who'd passed. Movements that failed. Art that outlived them all. He stirred sugar into his coffee and asked, "Have you seen it?" "The mural," she said. "Not in years." "Want to?" They walked together in silence. Past peeling walls, busy markets, alleys now unfamiliar. Until they reached the side of the old labor hall. The mural was still there. Faded, cracked, weather-worn, but intact. Time had stolen its sharpness, but not its spirit. The figures still stood. The colors still burned, quietly. Luna stepped closer, her fingers brushing the wall like a long-lost lover's cheek. "It's smaller than I remember," she murmured. Leo stood beside her, watching her, not the art. "You were bigger than I remembered," he said. She turned toward him. Their faces inches apart. This time, no crowd, no fire, just air between them. Their second kiss wasn't like the first. It wasn't urgent or electric. It didn't promise forever. It didn't beg forgiveness. It simply said, "I remember. And I'm still here." That night, they didn't speak of love or art or the past. They just walked. Through narrow streets. Past closed bookstores and dogs curled beneath doorways. Neither reached for the other's hand, but their steps fell in rhythm like an old habit they didn't need to rehearse. Over the following weeks, they saw each other again. Not every day. Not with declarations. Just quietly. Coffee. Silence. Sketches traded like old notes. They were no longer trying to impress or outshine. They'd already burned through that phase. They were tired of masterpieces, tired of bleeding for beauty and breaking for vision. What they wanted now was simpler. One afternoon, Leo handed her a folded page. A pencil drawing of her asleep, curled on her side. "I drew this from memory," he said. "It's not perfect." Luna held it in both hands, tears rising slow and unexpected. "It's everything," she whispered. Later, as they stood at the edge of the Zocalo, the city buzzing around them, Leo reached into his coat pocket and pulled out something small. A bronze ring. Tarnished. Old. "You bought this the year we met," she said softly. "I never gave it to you," he replied. "I was waiting for the right moment." Luna smiled gently. "There's no such thing." He looked at her. Really looked. "No more masterpieces," he said. She nodded, stepping close. "Just moments." The church was small, weathered stone walls, wooden pews polished by decades of hands, and stained glass windows that caught the late afternoon sun in bursts of muted color. It was nowhere near the grand cathedrals or bustling chapels where society's elite gathered. This was a place of quiet prayer, of private promises. Luna and Emiliano chose it deliberately. A sanctuary away from the chaos they had once known. No cameras. No whispers. Just the two of them, and the weight of everything they had survived. She wore a simple dress of soft cream linen, the kind that looked as if it had been worn 1,000 times and loved equally. Her hands trembled slightly as she took his arm, her breath shallow but steady. The pain in her joints had grown over the years, a reminder of the accident that had shaped her life, and the relentless march of time. Leo looked at her with a tenderness that words could never capture. His eyes, still sharp but softened with age, traced the faint lines on her face, the fierce spirit behind the frailty. When the priest asked if they would take each other again, Luna's voice was a whisper but steady. "I do." And with those two words, the past folded in on itself, and the future opened just a little wider. In the weeks that followed, Luna's strength waned. But her spirit blazed fiercely. She spent her days painting quietly in a sunlit studio, the walls covered with her final works. Portraits, fragments of landscapes, bursts of color that spoke of love, loss, and the persistence of hope. Leo sat beside her, reading poetry aloud, words she had loved since youth, lines about the fire in the heart and the beauty in the breaking. She would reach out for his hand, holding it like a lifeline. One evening, as the sun dipped low, Luna turned to him with a softness he hadn't seen in years. "There's something for you," she said, reaching into the pocket of her dress. She pulled out a simple copper ring, worn, slightly misshapen, but radiant in its imperfection. "You gave me this once," she whispered, "before any of it began. Now I give it back, to remind you of what we made. Not just art. Not just love. Survival." He took it carefully, pressing it to his lips, his eyes glistening. "I'll wear it always," he promised. When Luna passed, peacefully, in the arms of the man who had been her fiercest love and harshest lesson, Leo retreated from the world. But not from art. His final mural, still burning, rose on the walls of a public plaza in Mexico City. It was unlike anything he had ever painted. No fists, no fiery slogans, no grand allegories. Instead, it was her eyes. Vivid, alive, blazing with a quiet fire. Around them curled flames and flowers, wild and delicate. The eyes seemed to hold a lifetime of stories, pain, passion, defiance, and an unyielding spark that death could not dim. On the night the mural was unveiled, Leo stood beneath the streetlights, the cool air filled with murmurs of awe and remembrance. He raised a brush and traced a line in the air, as if painting the memory itself. In a low voice, he spoke the words he'd never said aloud before. "Luna, you taught me that love is not just a masterpiece to be created, but a fire to be tended, even when the flames burn everything else away. You are immortal, not because of paint or stone, but because of the light you left behind. I am yours, always." As the crowd dispersed, the mural glowed softly in the night, a beacon for those who believe in love's endurance beyond time, beyond pain. And in that glow, Luna and Emiliano lived on. Together. Love, as Luna and Emiliano's story shows us, is rarely simple. It is messy and complicated, woven with passion, pain, betrayal, and forgiveness. It doesn't demand perfection or purity. Instead, it asks for courage. The courage to face wounds, to embrace flaws, and to keep creating, even when the colors run and the canvas tears. Sometimes, the most beautiful masterpieces arise not from calm brushstrokes, but from the wreckage, the shattered pieces we pick up and piece back together with trembling hands and fierce hearts. Their love was not easy. It was a fire that burned too bright, too fast. It broke them, reshaped them, and ultimately made them whole. Through years of heartbreak and silence, distance and longing, Luna and Emiliano found a way to build something enduring, not despite their scars, but because of them. And in that, there is hope for all of us. Because love, in all its imperfect, fierce glory, teaches us who we are. It pushes us to grow, to forgive, and sometimes, to bloom anew from the ashes. So ask yourself, Would you forgive someone who once broke you, if they were also the one who helped you bloom? Speech Balloon, share your thoughts in the comments below. Your story matters here. If this story touched your heart, don't forget to like, share, and subscribe to Love Enchanted for more real, raw, and soul-stirring tales of love and resilience. Together, we'll keep exploring the depths of the human heart, one story at a time. True love is often portrayed as flawless and forever, but the story of Luna and Emiliano reveals a far more profound truth. Love is not defined by the absence of betrayal or heartbreak, but by what endures despite them. Their relationship shows us that passion and creativity are powerful forces. They can bind two souls in a profound connection, inspiring greatness and transformation. But these same forces can also ignite chaos, reveal flaws, and fracture trust. Luna and Emiliano were not perfect. They were flawed, impulsive, and deeply human. Their love was as volatile as their art, fiery, beautiful, and sometimes destructive. Yet, what makes their story so compelling is their ability to choose each other again and again, not because they have forgotten the pain or erased the past, but because they have grown beyond it. Their journey is a testament to resilience, the resilience of love, but also of the human spirit. It's about forgiveness that is hard-earned and messy, about accepting imperfection in ourselves and those we love. It's about understanding that true intimacy means holding someone's scars as tenderly as their strengths. Through their shared struggle and reconciliation, Luna and Emiliano teach us that love can be a process of continuous creation, a masterpiece painted over and over, with new layers added by time, hardship, and healing. Ultimately, their story invites us to embrace love in all its complexity, to find hope in the broken places, to believe that even after betrayal and separation, two people can build something lasting, something that honors both the pain and the passion that made them who they are. This is a love story not of perfection, but of persistence. A reminder that sometimes, the most enduring masterpieces are born from the very ruins of what once seemed irreparable. Thank you for watching and sharing this journey with us. Your time and support mean the world. We have many more heartfelt tales of love, passion, and resilience waiting just for you. Don't forget to like, share, and comment below. We love hearing from you. Until next time, keep your hearts open and your stories alive.